What's up, friends? This is Manni, and I don't understand war robots anymore. Please, guys, help me out, okay? I just looked at yesterday's test server announcement for the recent buffs, it's suggested by Pixonics, that should, of course, come to the live server, and I don't understand them. There are, at one point in time, what point in time does an 80% damage nerf come to your mind? Never to me, but Pixonics obviously thinks about it. It's further down the line. I show you this, which weapons that are meta are being nerfed by literally 80%. It's gonna be a long list, and it takes a while for me to discuss this. There's not gonna be gameplay. You can treat this as a listening experience video. You don't have to watch it, okay? But let's discuss this together, because I really need your help. I don't understand things. The Kestrel drone being the first thing I simply cannot understand. It's not new. We've already discussed this a little bit in some parts. The drone that previously gave you a health restore and gray HP fix per kill you achieve, right? So it was a drone that accompanied your assassin robots, or those that you got a lot of kills with, Ophion, Okochi, Shenlu, and whatever. And it changes its entire functionality to giving you a fix, a gray HP fix and repair on stealth activation, which makes even less sense considering that we already have this drone. It's called Showdown Drone, and it doesn't give you healing for it when switching between and from stealths, but it gives you enhanced performance with damage boosts and so on, right? Also keeping your weapons undestructible and so on. The Showdown Drone is amazing for exactly a crisis robot. And this is the drone that you do when you want to have a robot between stealth and no stealth, like low-key crisis, right? And now there's the Kestrel drone that I have on pretty much every other of my own robots here on my own account, that had its purpose before, is losing its entire functionality because Pixonics is changing it to the point where whenever you used it before, there's a 100% chance after this change you're not going to be using it afterwards, because it has no more the same purpose. At least you're not going to be using it on the same robots. And this is something that Pixonics, I hope you're treating this as a test server thing, where our feedback is still being heard and considered for change before it comes to the live server, because this needs to change. Please don't do this, because that will drive people mad. They have invested into this drone, and it has its purpose, they're using it, and even if you say, okay, it has been slightly overused, I understand when you nerf the repair a little bit, right, and the death mark weapons range, minus 5% repair, minus 10%, yeah, it's okay. And the weapons range there from the death mark, but that's because it's overused. I get it. I was using it also, all my robots except the crisis, but that part cannot happen. I mean, this is just wrong. Why do you change the entire, how the drone works altogether? That is just wrong. Please don't do that. Next drone, 10% damage boost to whiteout, a buff. It's okay. It's good. This drone was definitely not overused. Mute battleship, and here I must say Pixonics is actually responding or reacting with the mute in a timely manner. The mute has not been destroying the battlefield for like ages, like the Newton has, unfortunately. No, the mute is still really new, and I think in all my time playing war robots, I have been hit by 30 or 50 mute hits so far. So it's not like my entire gaming experience has been fully ruined already. So in this case, Pixonics actually responded with this nerf fast enough to prevent disaster, and that is good. 11 seconds to 7 seconds. I still think it's too long, considering it's a battleship that I can't even fight. Guy just presses a button and disables my robot entirely for 7 seconds. That is still too long. I don't think it should be longer than 5, honestly. It's better than 11. Please consider maybe making it 5. Paladin battleship is another one of those things I simply don't understand, because of course I understand it was overused, Pixonics. Yes, I can agree with you on that, because I was using it everywhere. This thing is just a no-brainer. It combines the strength of the roulette battleship having 2 durability extenders, right, which made it unique, to keep your robot in the game essentially forever if you play it well. And it combined that strength with 1 durability extender, plus giving you basically the power of 1 separate durability extender built into the battleship itself. Plus giving you the 300,000 HP shield, right? And a bit of repair to 125,000. And then converting the shield into even more repair afterwards. Plus having a slot for anti-jamming, for Aegis, right? It was a no-brainer. This battleship is highly used, maybe even overused, because it's really freaking good. So I can understand that Pixonics says, alright, this thing is like freaking overused as heck. Let's change some of the repair abilities. It gets a little less repair, it gets a little less shield. Fine by me, okay? I get that. But the gray HP restore is, again, like the Kestrel drone, it's the functionality of this battleship too. And to nerf it from 0.25 to 0.10 is too much of a change. If you were to make it 0.20, I would say, all right, fine. You just want to nerf it a bit, yeah? To bring what's overused a little more in line with the others, raise the use of others, and reduce the use of this a little bit, and it will be okay. But go to 0.10, it's too much. Can you please consider going not below 0.20 or 0.18 before it hits the live server? Because as you know, once it is live, it's hard to change it, but before it goes live, we can. So maybe this is a good feedback for you too. Keep the rest how it is. I understand it may have to happen, but this seems to be too much, right? Because again, it tackles the entire function of the battleship, and I don't think that is correct. Titan, Arthur, blast wave damage increased by 10%. That's awesome. A little theory here. I would actually like to see tested, maybe first on the test server, to go with a damage boost of 50 or even 60%. Why? The Arthur is an old Titan, first off. Secondly, it is so slow. Anyone getting in Arthur blast wave range, it's his own freaking fault and he deserves to be punished. Okay, so if this Arthur blast wave did significantly much more damage and bypass any time of defense, including Typhon shields, which I think currently it doesn't, right? Any shield, any defense system, anything gets bypassed by it to 100%. And it does, because that would really be okay. Because this thing is so slow, if you get hit by that shockwave, it's your fault, man. And in that case, I think it deserves to be punished. So if this would get 50%, I would support it. At least for a test on the test server, see how it goes. Newton durability. Ooh, here comes the big one. Or one of the big ones. Minus 22.5%. It's funny. It seems like the guy thinking, or the person considering these numbers was swaying between 22 and 23, and he just couldn't make a decision, and he went with 22.5. It just shows that this Titan simply had too much durability. Have you ever fired at a Newton? You have, probably, and you notice that whatever you do against it, other Titans lose a lot of HP and the Newton just doesn't. It's because A, you get passively suppressed, and then your friend gets also passively suppressed by the pilot, not just once and then it activates. That's another thing, the pilot should have an internal cooldown. Once it activates the suppression on somebody, that cooldown needs to start for 15 seconds before it will apply another suppression to anybody. Not suppress him, and then him who's trying to shoot you. No, just one time, one guy, and then there's an internal cooldown of at least 15 seconds. It's another reason why this Newton is so out of control. But the durability of a Sniper Titan that ends up with 1.1 million HP or something is, at the end of the battlefield, is crazy. Pixonics, I hope you're considering that whenever you bring something onto the test server, that there are no pilot skills, and this is not how the Titan will later perform, because there will be the battleship in use later, there will be the pilots in that, and when it has 600,000 now standing on the test server, it will have 1 million later standing on the battlefield on a live server. So you always need to consider that, and a Sniper Titan with 1 million HP, more defense points than any other Titan pretty much has in the game. Like, how was that even allowed to enter the game? That already is just mind-blowing, because it's a Sniper Titan. It doesn't make any sense to have this more tanky than any other Titan. But yeah, it's losing some of that here, and it's correct, but again, this should never have happened in the first place. Choke duration, 9 to 5 seconds. It is helping, and the choke cooldown is going slightly up, but again, this doesn't change the problem. The problem will still remain, Pixonics. You can still be rotation choked by multiple Newtons, ending up with the exact same effect. That you get lifted, you can't do anything about it, and you get killed without anything that works. And unfortunately, I have to say it, the Newton will stay banned on my channel because it is not fixing the actual problem. It makes it a little better, but the actual problem, 800 meter choke range, is not okay. Through walls, 800 meters. I shouldn't affect this other guy's gameplay in such a tremendous negative way by just pressing a button at 800 meters. That's not fair. That shouldn't be happening. And his anti-control must work against it. Anti-control should finally work against all effects trying to take control of you. That's its point, its name, and it's what needs to happen. That is an important thing we need for choke also, and mute battleships. And the next thing is, there needs to be an immunity. When you get choked once, you cannot be choked again. It shouldn't happen. And if another Newton tries to choke the same guy and he wasn't paying attention that the guy was just choked before, well then sorry, there goes your cooldown. Or the cooldown simply doesn't work. Maybe you just can't lift the next the guy again and it's grayed out for you because the guy just has his choke resistance going. I don't know, one of those things, but it cannot happen that you rotation choke players to death just because there's multiple Newtons and the player can't do anything. Phase shift should let you fall out of it. Anti-control must work against it, and an immunity to choke needs to happen. This will address the problem. And of course 800 meters. That's just not okay. Those things, but the choke duration and cooldown is not going to tackle the problem. I'm sorry to say it, that's not enough. But yeah, you can no longer, and that's also a thing, you can no longer break 3 from choke. So after this balance change, even your nether robots with many dashes, your Ophion in fast flight, your Eiffel Titan that can dash in the air, they will no longer be able to break out of the choke. You will be locked in place indefinitely, or for the duration, no matter what. And that is actually a buff for the choke now, among all things, right? Whereas, of course, altogether it's a nerf, but this part is a buff. Long shot damage minus 30%. Okay. Then, Rook, the damage that you cause when landing next to the enemy, called castling, and the suppression that you do to them when you are near them, is getting nerfed. Minus 15% damage, and from 75 to 60% damage suppression. Let's be fair, that is an okay change, because I was never really using the Rook as something to suppress the enemy, as something to deal damage to him with the thing. Nah, it was a nice side effect, but this flight and this jump, this is a mobility perk. It's just a perk from mobility. You don't really use it specifically to deal damage. It is just sometimes and occasionally useful when you are in a Titan one-on-one in shorter range and you time it well. Okay, but overall, it's more like a movement ability, and as such, this is just a minor change to you. The gray damage reduction of 35 to 25%, however, is a bigger change. I don't think, though, that the Rook will be useless afterwards. I still think it's going to be great, but it's not all of it. Meteor cooldown damage, I think this is the jump, because I don't understand why it's called Meteor here, because the Meteor, the word the Meteor, does never appear anywhere here in the list of the Newton, the Rook, but it will have a longer cooldown, shorter cooldown from 18 to 15 seconds. I think that means the jump, but the shield replenishment will go from 6 to 10 seconds, so you'll no longer having as many shields ready to protect you all the time. Enemies have a longer time to drop your shields before you can pop them yourself to heal yourself again. So it does change the performance quite a bit. This change too. This and this change together, gray damage reduction and shield replacement, those two changes are really drastic. But the Rook will still stay strong. I'm pretty sure. Sirius, and that is a big change. I'm gonna make a Sirius video with this, because self-repair goes from 0.15 to 1.5% per second. That is a 1000% buff. 10 times the amount of self-repair that you previously had. That is insane. You're actually going to be able to repair yourself effectively now. So awesome here. That is a good change. I want to see how this works. Robots. Curie, turrets damage, minus 10%. By the way, the big damage nerf of 80% is still coming. It's close. We're getting to it. Curie, turrets damage, minus 10%. I guess these things were doing too much damage. Erebus shield regeneration rate plus 10%. Definitely a good change. I would also like to include that what did we play? The Bulwark. Please allow the Bulwark shield to regenerate continuously, also while it's on. You cannot tell me the Bulwark is overused, seriously. Yeah, there is no way you're gonna make that run that by me without me rejecting it. That thing is just, you rarely ever see a Bulwark, and there is a reason for it. We have so many shield robots, they all get strong shields and regenerate them while running. Let that happen to the Bulwark too. Can we do that? Can we do this one thing without Ultimate Pixonic? Can we do this without bringing an Ultimate Bulwark? Let's see. I'm asking for it. Hoki durability, minus 25%. That is a big freaking change. Jesus, minus 25%. But again, this robot spawned into the game with a Titan level HP, so... Or even more than Titans for that matter. Ability cooldown from 12 to 15 seconds. Definitely a good change too. Ability effects are active only during the charge phase. And that's insane. Because it means that the charge is... the ability lasts longer than the time you run fast. And after the time you run fast, which I think is like 6 seconds, after that time, you will only do the pulsating effects, but you will no longer have the charge of running. So that means that you will lose the effect of the protection from the Orokochi after getting... after 6 seconds. You only have protection for 6 seconds. The Orokochi will actually be a pushover after this. You can just kill him. And also, let's not forget, the Orokochi was already nerfed in the last phase. No, it was the same. But yeah, with the 9.7 update, I think they changed the effectiveness of the protection as well, where you no longer convert into dots so effectively, or you take more damage instead of the from dots that you convert. And so the Orokochi actually loses way more health from the damage you accumulate against him during his ability. And now the ability will even run shorter as well, plus less durability, plus longer cooldown. Orokochi is essentially 50, maybe 30 or 40% of what it used to be. I'm not joking, that's a 60% nerf together with 9.7, and this will probably be 9.8. 9.7 we already have on the live server. They together makes the Orokochi minus 60%, I would guess. Altogether. That's literally my analysis here. Ophion speed, 61 to 67. What? It gets faster. Interesting. 61 to 67. Built-in weapon range from 500 though to 350 meters. So you can no longer brawl again as far with the built-in weapon. The built-in weapon dispersion is plus 20%. So apparently you don't fire as accurate anymore, which I don't think matters too much when you now fire only below 350 meters range. I don't think that the dispersion will even matter much at that range. Flight duration, however, is a massive change, 8 to 5 seconds. And I believe 9.7 introduced the change that the shield will only be used activate when activating the flight, but as you descend, as you start to fall, you will no longer have your shield, or that's what it's supposed to happen. I think it still works for the quicksand Ophion skin somehow, but the regular Ophion skin doesn't. That's when you guys often ask me, Manni, how were you dealing damage to the Ophion while he was landing? It's because the regular skin version, which I recognize from seeing him, you can hit him through the shield while he's landing already. Whereas the, or you were able to do that, whereas the quicksand skin, the special version skin, cannot get bypassed. I'm not sure if this still works, but yeah, 9.7 I think wanted to change that, and now they're changing the flight duration from 8 to 5 seconds. I'm not sure if one of the other is, if they all active, but we'll see. Flight acceleration from 230 to 150%. Aha, there it is. So you might, while you might get faster as the Ophion itself, during the flight, you no longer get this big boost of speed, although the boost of 150% against 67 is not that much less than the 230% boost against 61, I guess. So it is slower, but not, it's not going to be Fenrir level slower. Sorry, Fafnir level slower during the air. No, it will still be relatively fast, and faster even on the ground. But the stealth duration, the flight duration with shield is different. Siren, reflected damage from 40 to 60%. Absorber damage bonus for built-in weapon decreased by 20%. What absorb? It doesn't have an absorber. Okay, reflected damage goes... So you reflect more damage with the Siren back to the enemy. And the absorb damage bonus for the built-in weapon damage decreased by 20%. Wait, the Siren strengthened its built-in weapon? What built-in weapon? You mean the freezing rocket? The freezing rocket did more damage as you blocked more damage? That wasn't a thing, was it? I'm confused about this one. I don't know. Please explain to me what they mean with that, because it doesn't have an absorber shield, and I don't think that the damage you blocked and reflected back to the damage to the enemy had anything to do with its built-in weapon. I don't know. Wayland, defense points 40 to 46. We already discussed this before. Titan weapons, Basilisk is getting 10% damage boost. And why not Crate? Why only Basilisk, the big one, and Crate as the beta, the smaller weapon, doesn't get it? Not sure why. Also 10%, not really that big of a change. Cinder, area of effect range from 125 to 130. Reload from 16 to 15 seconds. It is a very small change, but it does help those of you who use Cinder a little bit. I think the reload should be a little faster still because the Cinder really took too long to reload. Fulgur damage, minus 25%. This is one of the big changes where I said 70-80% and there's more coming down the line. Fulgur damage and Tonans. Tonans even more. Okay, let's sort them so they are next to each other. Sorry. That we have this right next to each other. Fulgur, minus 25% damage in general. Titan damage modifier, however, increased from 400 to 450%. So it will deal less damage against robots, but only a little less damage against Titans. Reload time, 5 to 12 seconds. That is a 130 or 140% increase of reload speed. That's just freaking insane. 5 seconds to 12 seconds. Tonans gets it even worse. The heavy version, the alpha version, minus 35% damage loss, and also 5 to 12 seconds reload. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever you used Fulgur Tonans before this nerf, you will no longer want to use it afterwards because you're spending the entire battle reloading for barely any damage done to the enemy. That reload is a problem. And here we come to my suggestion I sent in as feedback to Pixonic. I told them, hey, Fulgur Tonans was a problem at long range. It killed things too efficiently and too quickly at given range, 600 to 800 meters. How is it fair that it can one-tap you at that range? But in short range, the weapon actually worked okay. It wasn't breaking the game in a range of 100 to 300 meters. In that range, it was okay, you see? So the problem was only that it was allowed to do all of that at that max range. And so I suggested to Pixonic, what if instead of changing the reload how you did it here, what if you would change how the weapon delivers damage at range, similar to Cyclone and Cataclysm instead. Don't make the weapon useless, but make it less effective at range. So, like Cyclone and Cataclysm, the closer you get to your target, the more damage you do, up to your maximum damage output of between 100 meters, I think. And the further you get away, the Cyclone and Cataclysm, or also Spark, Scourge, and Calamity, the less damage they will do, to the point of their maximum 600 meters range, where they do only maybe 20% or 25% of their damage output, right? So it's not really that dangerous anymore. They can still shoot, they can still deal a little bit of damage, and it's still annoying to get shot by them, but you will no longer really kill things quickly with it at long range, where it's not supposed to. This is a function they could implement with the Fulgur Tonans. Again, Pixonic, if this is test server, and if our feedback is still taken into account, which I think should be the case since you're suggesting it to be tested on the test server, please consider changing this, at least consider changing the reload from 5 to 12 seconds, scratch that part, and change it so that the weapon between 600 and 800 meters range, the weapons will only do 40% of their damage output. They lose 60% and deal 40% or 50% of their damage, something like this, okay? And at between 400 and 600 meters, they will do 60% of their damage, and between 0 and 400 meters, they will do, I don't know, 80 to 100% of their damage, right? Please consider that, because this would make the weapon, basically it would fix everything the weapon has as a problem, and still leave the weapon useful in the game. I think that is the absolute perfect solution there. So please consider it. Grom, Shotgun plus 7%, Squall plus 7%. Okay, so Shotgun, the old ones. It's a decent change. Weapons, Arbalest plus 20%. That is insane. I'm gonna have to test this with you guys. Brisant, damage, minus 25%. That's big. Brisant Shotgun. And then reload from 3.6 to 5 seconds. Jesus! 25% damage loss. Then a 30% or 40% reload loss, and then the range increase from 500 to 600 meter, which makes no sense if you nerf the dispersion. Actually, wait, I think this is a buff. Dispersion is going smaller, so you have less spread. But still, the weapon doesn't do any damage at 500 or 600 meters range. Against Titans, yes, because it's big targets. Against regular robots, you barely even hit, and at 600 meters range, it will be even worse. So even with the dispersion counter, I think it will not matter this part. What matters, however, is this part here and the reload. You know, if you nerf the damage like this, why don't you let the reload like as it used to be? Or make it 4 seconds. But if you nerf the reload like this, why do you also nerf the damage like this? You see, it's always a little bit too much. Make the reload maybe 4 seconds, okay? Then we can find a middle ground here, but this seems to be a little too much again. Now, Cestus, damage, minus 25%, blast charge speed, minus 50%. Why? Dude, why? The weapon is not overused or too powerful. I have this here on my Crisis robot, and while we had, during the last live stream, a good performance with it, but it was also because I was playing the Crisis really careful and I was firing at the right moments. This weapon itself, it's a heavy weapon. Of course it needs to hurt when you get hit by it. It's a freaking heavy weapon, man. And it loses 25% damage boost, damage output, and blast damage, blast speed, charge speed. It makes no sense to me. I would do this. I would scratch the entire thing right out there, because there is no point for it, no reason for this, if you ask me. Obviously, I don't have your numbers, Pixonic. You see other statistics that I do. For me, it's just what I see in the Champions League, in the game. But I don't see an overuse of Cestus at all. And I don't think you see a strong overuse of it either. And I don't think we can say the weapon was overpowered. Cryo, plus 10% damage, good. Plus 7% flux damage, good. Hydra, area effect range. I don't understand it because from what I gathered, there was no AoE on the Hydra altogether. So, I don't know why. They say they have a higher area effect radius. Maybe we have to test it. Maybe we can bypass physical shields with it now. When firing at a shell, for example. I don't believe it, but we'll see. Damage plus 5%. Woo, that's big. Iron plus 5% damage. Xiphos, same thing. Cestus gets the 20% loss, and Xiphos, the smaller version, and Labris, they get also 20 or 25% loss. Again, these weapons, they were not overused. Reaper, big change here, 12 to 15 seconds. It is a 30%, no, actually it's a 25%, exactly 25% reload increase. So it is effectively a 25% DPM loss, damage per minute, okay? I'm not saying DPS, damage per second, because it's misleading, because there's so much reload going in between that it's hard to calculate that one, but DPM, you can calculate easier with taking charge reload cycles and firing cycles into mind, and the DPM goes effectively down by 25%. Not exactly 25% of your entire battle performance, because you're not constantly firing your weapon, right? But so if you occasionally just fire your weapon and you typically don't fire for a while afterwards, then not really much is changing, because thankfully they're not touching the damage. Only the reload speed. So it's a bit of a situational thing, but overall, if you were to fire continuously all the time, it would equal out to a 25% DPM loss. Shatter, damage, minus 22.5%, same as before with the Newton. Minus 22.5%. Brisant got minus 25%, the heavy shotgun. Shatter gets 22%, and Splinter gets minus 40%. What? Minus 40% damage, and then the same reload nerf on top. Wow. So what we did before with the Dagon, 6 times Splinter, basically decimating the battlefield. Yes, I agree it was overperforming, but to a certain part, you have to agree it's also the Dagon that brings 6 weapon slots to the table. That is also part of the reason. But a 40% damage nerf seems crazy. Maybe the light version was a little bit too much compared to medium and heavy. I don't really know. I haven't gone into a perfect comparison. Maybe you guys are right and then the Splinter needs a bit more of a nerf, but 40%, just as 25% here and 22% here is just wrong. Either go with the reload or go with some of the damage. Maybe make it 20% on the Splinter and 4 seconds reload here, and make it 10% here and 4 seconds. I don't know, but it's too much overall. And now we come, ladies and gentlemen, to the actual biggest nerf. Damper, Tamer. The weapons that have been tremendously overperforming and ruining the game for many of us are finally being addressed, but in what way? Range, 600 to 500 meters. Dispersion, 0. It literally had 0 spread. Can you believe it? The weapon that instantly deleted you at 600 meters, plus applying a rust effect, plus having a short reload, plus a super quick unload. It had, Pixonic gave it 0 spread. Because, well, it was new, it needed to be sold, so it gets 0 spread. Why was this allowed? Why? I know why. It needed to be selling. And now it gets dispersion from 0 to 0.0450. It's hard to say exactly how much that means, but I heard someone say it's more than Shredder in terms of spread. I didn't research this now. I don't know exactly the spread of Shredder, but I can tell you the Shredder spread is insane. You barely hit at all at your maximum range of 500 meters. And if this is indeed more than Shredder, then you would hit pretty much nothing anymore at your 500 meters range cap. So, they nerfed the damage. No, they don't nerf the damage specific. No, yeah, they did. Because in the 9.7 update, they already nerfed the damage by 30%. Let's not forget this. They already live update on the live server. Like I always say, there are multiple phases to your nerfs. They don't dare to nerf your things at once from 100 to 20%. They don't do that at once. They do it in phases. So to fool you and think it's like, okay, it's a little bit of a nerf, and then comes a little bit of a nerf, and then comes a little bit, and basically the weapon after all is not usable anymore. And that is what happened here. The first update, just a few weeks ago, nerfed the damage by 30%. And I think it also nerfed how the repair stack, anti-repair rust effect works. Now, they come in with phase 2, nerfing range to 500 meters from 600, big change. Dispersion, if this is true, higher than Shredder range, where it basically makes 0, maybe 20% damage output at max range from its 100% before. That is already an 80% damage nerf. Rust maximum stack reduction from 90 to 60%, so the rust effect will be reduced as well. And here comes the craziest thing. Shot interval 0.1 to 0.5. So you fire 5 times slower than before. That alone is an 80% damage nerf. This alone means 80% less damage output. Let's take onto that 30% less damage output with the 9.7 update. Let's add to that the range loss of 500 meters. Let's add to that the perhaps another 70-80% less damage at maximum range. You will essentially tickle the enemy at its maximum range of 500 meters. And even at your short range, you will barely drop a Dagon shield. No, in fact, you will no longer drop a Dagon shield. If you fire at a Dagon robot with fully maxed tamers and dampers, you will not even have enough firepower in your clip to drop the Dagon shield. You won't. And I'm not talking about one weapon. I'm talking about a full Hoki setup running 2 tamers and 2 dampers. You won't get through the Dagon shield. The weapon nerf of 80% damage output here is too much for that. And then the fact that you have a spread, the reload loss, and the rust effect, and the 30% nerf from the previous. We're talking altogether a nerf from previously, before 9.7, 100%, 1.0 of its original performance, to after this and the last update, 10%. Literally, the weapon is at 10% of its capacity that we had before 9.7. It's a 90% nerf when you count both nerfs together. 90%. Pixonic, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. These weapons were overperforming. We can agree on that, but this is unacceptable. The range, the 30% before, and the spread is more than enough. That thing here at the end, the shot interval, you have to do this with it. Scratch it. It has to be scratched completely. That is absolutely unacceptable. Do you want your players to keep buying things in the future? Do you want to make sales going forward in War Robots Pixonic? Do you? Because people will not do it anymore after this. Anyone who bought this, and you do a 90% nerf to it now, effectively leaving it less efficient than pinatas are. Or you bring it at the level of pinata. People will walk away from purchases, I'm telling you guys. This is not gonna happen. This is not gonna happen. Please take my feedback here. Save yourself from a disaster and scratch this part. This. Or make it 0.15. Can you see how much overkill it is that I consider a number change here, and I cannot even consider 0.2 because it would mean a 50% damage loss. If you just made it 0.2 like so, it would be 50% damage nerf already. 50%. So 0.15, that would already be, oh my god, now it's getting too complicated for me. 25%? I don't know. If 33%? Oh man, even that would be too much, I think. Actually, hold on. Shot interval. You fire instead of every 0.1, you fire every 0. Yeah, it would be even this would be a tremendous nerf. You can't do it. You have to scratch it, guys. Please, Pixonic, you have to scratch this part entirely. Because if you add this together with the dispersion and the 30% damage nerf and the change of the rust effect and the change of range, you end up with nothing. You end up with a weapon that is completely, it's basically throwing snowballs at the enemy. You have to scratch that part completely. No matter how I'm trying to work with you, Pixonic. I'm trying to find a compromise where you can add something of that, but it's not possible. This thing cannot go in, really. And then volt damage plus 5%, it boggles my mind a little bit because the volt is already really powerful, but that is a big change, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my god, I don't know, you can probably not listen to my voice for the next 2 weeks anymore. I'm sorry I had to do this to you guys, but it was a big change, and these things need to be discussed because there are at least 4 or 5 changes in this list that have to be reconsidered. And I'm not even going to go through... Okay, let's do it. This one has to be reconsidered. I wouldn't be mad at you if you tune out now, guys. Absolutely not. If you do, have a good one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video, hopefully. This has to be considered. I personally believe, that is just my personal thing, this 7 seconds need to be 5 seconds, right? That is my personal belief, that it would be a healthier game if a button press from someone from anywhere on the map could not deactivate your robot for 7 full seconds. Then Paladin Gray HP, please don't do it to 0.10. Instead, make it 0.18 at the maximum. Guys, please. Maybe the summary is useful for Pixonic. This would be too much of a change if you count the rest into. Please don't make it so drastic. I understand when something is overused, it has to be done something about it, but some things are just too much. When it comes to the Newton, I support all of what is listed here. But, and it's not directly a Newton nerf. Anti-control needs to work, and any negative effect should have a counter what is it? Resistance against that effect, similar to what suppression and lockdown gets. All of them. That includes also the new Titan, Bedveer, on the test server right now. We need to get an immunity against being taunted. Same as we need an immunity against getting choked. When you got choked. Right now on the test server, if someone is taunted, you cannot taunt him again, I think. It will be grayed out, right? This same thing needs to happen after the taunt, while the resistance against taunt is happening for this player. Because essentially, otherwise, you could be rotation taunted, like you would be rotation choked, and that can still happen, and that is the very problem. And 800 meters range, choke is not fair also. Make the range down to 300 or 500 meters. Range of choke to 500 meters, maximum. And allow all anti-controls to work against all effects, all negative effects. You have to sacrifice a module slot for that. Very important. Phase shift should probably let you fall out of it. And immunities against all negative effects have to happen, including taunt and including choke. And while we're at it, Pixonic, and while you're probably listening, make sure to know that right now on the test server, when you taunt someone and the taunting Titan dies, the guy remains taunted. Taunt is nothing else but somebody telling you a really bad F word in your face. He's like, you son of a gun, you are a real murderer. Okay, somebody's really nasty to you and he says things that you freaking hate him so much for you just have to punch him. You don't punch the other guy anymore because you're too mad at him now because he said that to you. That is a taunt, right? Now the guy dies or is punched and he's knocked out on the floor. Why would I still be taunted by him? Makes no sense. After the taunting titan dies, the taunt effect needs to stop too. Please fix that. Probably a bug, I hope. But yeah, and obviously resistance against this. So I can't scratch something out, but this is something important here. Then, what else was it? I think the flight duration on the Ophion should stay as it is. If you nerf the rest... Actually, no. Let's scratch that. The flight duration can go down, but the shield should stay how it is upon landing and flight. Okay? Or... if you nerf the flight duration, then the shield in turn should stay until flight and landing. Okay? So it shouldn't be both of it, because otherwise we see the same thing happening like it happened to the Aochun. And I really think this is something we should learn from. So I'm scratching this out, even though it means either this or the shield upon landing and so on. Then full good damage. Again, here, I think I suggested a really, really good win-win situation, a really good compromise. Scratch the reload and go with a firing similar to Cataclysm Cyclone, where the damage simply decreases at range. Because you could leave the weapon essentially useful but it will also fix the problem with the killing at long range. Then this here is nonsense, if you ask me. And Brisant, either go only with 4 seconds reload or go down with the damage nerf. So that is it. And here I said about the shot interval with Tamer and Damper. By the way, Trickster Receiver, I forgot to mention this. Same dispersion, same range nerf. And the dot duration is only 5 seconds. Oh, very important, I forgot this. The dot duration instead of 15, only 5 seconds. So you apply all those dots and they will already run out at 5 seconds. That is an incredible big nerf. Very big. And that means if you nerf it like this, that is insane. Then at the very least, also here, scratch the shot interval, because that also means with the shot interval, you take 20, like it's an 20%, 80% nerf to applying the dot effect, because you apply it 80% slower, and then it runs out after 5 seconds. Why would you even bother you firing dot anymore? Really? This is too much. So that was my summary. Goddamn, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. I wish you all a great weekend. And I'm going to spend some time resting, and you probably also, from this annoying guy talking to your ear all this time. Thank you for watching. If you have been sticking here till the end, you're awesome. Until then, Manni off. Bye-bye.